Hello and very warm welcome at Amish Cycle 585. I am Amish Cycle. Foreign news have been reported by American, European, Asian, African, Australian news channels and the news agencies. So please, let's go to the headlines.
AB's World News Tonight, America's most watched newscast. Now streaming same day with all the breaking news of the day on Disney Plus. Most watched, most trusted. Now on Disney Plus every night.
Tonight, the breaking news here: a U.S. submarine sinking an Iranian warship. The dramatic images tonight showing a U.S. fast attack submarine for the first time since World War II, firing a torpedo to sink an Iranian warship. 180 on board, sinking in the Indian Ocean. Tonight, the Pentagon says it has struck or sunk more than 20 ships from Iran. With the war widening tonight, thousands of Americans stranded, trying to get out. Nearly a dozen nations pulled into this war. Retaliation from Iran tonight, a UK fighter jet shooting down an Iranian drone over Jordan. And the Pentagon now saying the Iranian mastermind behind a 2024 plot to assassinate Donald Trump has been killed. Ian Pannell standing by live from the region. Tonight, those trapped Americans trying to get out, more than 20,000 flights in the region canceled. Authorities say some Americans now driving to other countries. A commercial flight seen taking off amid smoke coming from an Israeli airstrike. James Longman in Iraq. Tonight, the American service members lost. The Army reservists killed in Kuwait now identified. The family of 20-year-old Sergeant Declan Cody learning he had died. Tonight, his sister here describing the moment she heard the doorbell ring. Arthur Raditz from the region as well. At the White House tonight, President Trump grading the U.S. military operation so far on a scale of 1 to 10. He says it's a 15. Tonight, Senate Democrats are trying to force a war powers vote to restrict further military action without congressional approval. The other news tonight, the plane crashing into the backyard of a home just missing a baby's room. The pilot was trying to circle back moments after takeoff. We're also tracking severe storms across multiple states at this hour. Thunderstorms, possible tornadoes, heavy rain and ice in the Northeast, and right behind it, record warmth. Tonight here we remember a college football icon, Lou Holtz, the legendary leader of Notre Dame's Fighting Irish. And a major recall expanding tonight. There is potential for glass found in rice. And we'll have the recall right here. From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight.
It's 3 a.m. here in Paris. Thanks for staying with us on France 24. This is Night Watch. Our coverage of the conflict in Iran continues. The US widens its war in Iran to the Indian Ocean as a submarine sinks an Iranian warship off the coast of Sri Lanka. At least 87 crew members killed, with a stark warning from the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, that the war has only just begun. Republican senators vote to block a bipartisan resolution to curb President Trump's military strikes on Iran. The War Powers resolution aims to subject further U.S. attacks to congressional approval on a constitutional premise that only Congress has the authority to declare war. Republicans insist Trump's action is legal. As Commander-in-Chief, and the Israeli military issues fresh evacuation warnings across southern Lebanon and Beirut as airstrikes intensify in response to Hezbollah attacks. At least 72 people have been killed and more than 83,000 displaced since Lebanon was drawn into the war on Monday, when the Iran-backed militants fired rockets and drones across the border. A U.S. submarine has sunk an Iranian warship in the Indian Ocean, killing at least 87 crew members in a dramatic widening of the war in Iran. The Pentagon released footage of the moment a torpedo sunk the vessel off the coast of Sri Lanka, whose Navy said 32 people had been rescued. Around 180 people were believed to have been aboard the ship, identified as the Iris Dena. U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said this was never meant to be a fair fight and that the U.S. was punching Iran while they're down. James Facina has this update.
These are the images released by the Pentagon showing a combat ship being blown up and lifted above the water after being hit by a torpedo fired from a US submarine. On the left of the video, crew members can be seen running to the bow.
Of course, is that we're investigating.
The US Defense Secretary said on Wednesday that its Navy had struck an Iranian vessel off the coast of Sri Lanka.
Yesterday, in the Indian Ocean, and we'll play it on the screen there, an American submarine sunk an Iranian warship that thought it was safe in international waters. Instead, it was sunk by a torpedo. Quiet death. The first
these elections.
So join me, Kira Soldani, for the latest stories in your world.
Really, in the Islamic Republic's history has it appeared so vulnerable?
The World, weeknights at 9 on ABC News. Today, US submarine sinks an Iranian warship, killing more than 80 Iranian sailors off the Sri Lankan coast. More stranded Australians from the Middle East are on their way home after 200 touchdowns safely overnight in Sydney. Canadian PM Mark Carney, along with Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, called for a de-escalation of hostilities in the Middle East.
We're seeing Gulf states that have not been involved attacked across the board.
And more heavy rain set to lash far north Queensland as a potential cyclone brews off the Coral Sea. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Ross Childs. A US torpedo strike on an Iranian warship in the Indian Ocean has killed more than 80 Iranian sailors. It's the latest American attack targeting Iran's withering naval fleet as the US and Israel intensify their campaign against Iran's security forces. 180 crew members were on board the Iranian vessel, which was in international waters near the coast of Sri Lanka when it was hit. Sri Lankan authorities say its navy received a distress signal and sent ships and planes to the site, but by the time they arrived, there was no sign of the ship. 32 people were rescued and taken to hospitals across the country. 87 bodies have so far been retrieved. The Iristina, one of Iran's newest warships, was armed with heavy guns, surface-to-air missiles, anti-ship missiles and torpedoes. It comes as Israel has launched a new wave of attacks on Tehran and southern Lebanon. Israel says it's focusing on regime targets in western and central Tehran. North America correspondent Barbara Miller has more details from Washington.
Pete Hegseth, who calls himself the Secretary of War, released video of the moment when that Iranian vessel was struck in the Indian Ocean. Pretty dramatic footage. He said that the vessel had gone there thinking it was safe in international waters, but it had met a quiet death. It was a pretty chest-thumping, fighting talk sort of media briefing from the Defense Secretary. He said that the Iranian Navy was essentially on the seabed. He said that their Air Force was gone and that in a matter of days, the US and Israeli Air Forces would have complete control of Iranian skies. Let's just get a little flavor of his tone now.
Our warfighters have maximum authorities granted personally by the President and yours truly. Our rules of engagement are bold, precise, and designed to unleash American power, not shackle it. This was never meant to be a fair fight, and it is not a fair fight. We are punching them while they're down, which is exactly how it should be.
Now, where Pete Hegseth was a lot less verbose was when he was pressed on the reported striking of a school in southern Iran. He said simply that the US was still investigating that. A BBC reporter came back and said, well, you got a lot of intelligence, you're really still unclear about what happened. Again, he wanted to just shut that down and said it was being investigated. We've also heard again from the President, Donald Trump, giving some remarks at the head of a White House event. He again claimed that if Iran had not been struck, they would have had a nuclear weapon within 2 weeks. Now, there's no actual evidence of that, but because inspectors can't get in there, there's no evidence against it, as it were. But it would seem to go against the US's claims that the strikes last June, Operation Midnight Hammer, had obliterated Iran's nuclear program. Trump acknowledged that the military...
This is Asia First.
Good morning, I'm Martin Gay. It's 8 o'clock in Singapore and Hong Kong. China sending its special envoy in the Middle East for mediation as the war widens. Foreign Minister Wang Yi tells officials from Saudi Arabia and the Emirates that the red line of protecting civilians must not be crossed. He's also condemning the attacks on non-military targets while calling for the safety of shipping routes. A U.S. submarine sank an Iranian warship off the southern coast of Sri Lanka, killing dozens of sailors and dramatically widening Washington's pursuit of the Iranian Navy. 87 bodies recovered, 32 rescued.
The Iranian Navy rests at the bottom of the Persian Gulf. Combat ineffective, decimated, destroyed, defeated, pick your adjective. In fact, last night, we sunk their prize ship, the Soleimani.
Sarah, while the oil prices stabilize as U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent doubles down on President Trump's offer to support tankers transiting through the Strait of Hormuz. More measures set to be announced in the coming days as the U.S. seeks to support global energy markets roiled by the war on Iran. The U.S. also barreling ahead with its aggressive trade policy, even as the crisis in the Middle East deepens. Mr. Bessent says higher tariffs of 15% are likely to be implemented this week. I'm Elizabeth Liu. Also this morning, Chinese Premier Hu Jintao will deliver the government's work report this morning. According to a copy seen by CNA, policymakers have set the GDP growth target for 2026 at 4.5% to 5%. And coming up, voting set to open in Nepal in the first election since deadly anti-corruption protests toppled the government 6 months ago. A wave of younger candidates are challenging veteran politicians who have dominated the Himalayan nation for decades. Alleged corruption, unemployment, and wealth disparity are among the issues.
The U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has confirmed that the U.S. sank an Iranian warship off the coast.
Operation Epic Fury has entered a new phase, a shock-and-awe campaign to trigger regime collapse. U.S. forces have taken complete and total control of Iranian airspace, and now it's showtime. The two most powerful air forces in the world will have complete control of Iranian skies, uncontested airspace. It means we will fly all day, all night, day and night, finding, fixing, and finishing the missiles and defense industrial base of the Iranian military. This is twice the amount of firepower that we used in Iraq, and we're using next-generation tech. An unlimited stockpile of 2,000-pound GPS and laser-guided precision gravity bombs. High-powered laser weapons fired by the Navy are microwaving Iranian drones. And long-range, high-speed precision strike missiles are hitting targets with pinpoint accuracy. First time used in combat. Also the first time, kamikaze attack drones. Space Force satellites are detecting Iranian missile launches, then within seconds, blasting out the launch pads. The Pentagon's even using AI to develop targets. We're even bringing back good old faithful torpedoes. Yesterday, in the Indian Ocean, and we'll play it on the screen there, an American submarine sunk an Iranian warship that thought it was safe in international waters. Instead, it was sunk by a torpedo. Quiet death. The first sinking of an enemy ship by a torpedo since World War II. U.S. Central Command has confirmed that over 20 Iranian ships have been sunk. The average Republican now owns more boats than the Iranian Navy. And we just smoked their crown jewel. Last night, we sunk their prize ship, the Soleimani. Looks like POTUS got him twice. We've knocked out their Navy, Air Force. Nothing safe, above or below ground. A new nuclear bunker they were building just got obliterated. Anything can happen, but this war is off to the best start in American military history.
We're doing very well on the war front, to put it mildly, I would say. Somebody said, on a scale of 10, where would you rate it? I said about a 15. The missiles are being wiped out rapidly. Their launches are being wiped out. And, you know, it's really a nation that was out of control, and they would have used it on us if we let them, if we waited any longer.
The regime leadership is either dead, missing, or cowering in bunkers. For us, it doesn't matter who rules. They just have to play by the rules. More on that later.
This is Sky News, the headlines. In a dramatic escalation, a US submarine sinks an Iranian warship off the coast of Sri Lanka, the first such attack ordered by the White House since World War II.
They are toast, and they know it. Or at least, soon enough, they will know it.
With the war entering its 6th day, Iran says that Israeli and American airstrikes killed more than 1,000 people.
We're going to go behind. You can hear the boom.
But Iran and its allies are still hitting back. Sirens sound across northern Israel. And how the war threatens the global economy. Iran wreaks havoc on the world's oil and gas supplies. Good morning. Iran is warning of widespread destruction across the Middle East after the US sunk one of its warships in the Indian Ocean. At least 80 people were killed when a US submarine hit the Iris Dina with a torpedo. The US and Israel also aimed more strikes at Iran, forcing the postponement of the mourning ceremony for Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Iran retaliated with its own launches of missiles and drones aimed at military and economic infrastructure across the region, including Turkey. Our US correspondent David Blevins begins our coverage.
The periscope view of a US strike on an Iranian ship. And the Pentagon's view of the enemy.
They are toast, and they know it.
It was an audacious attack, claiming dozens of lives in the Indian Ocean, international waters, where they may have felt safe.
Instead, it was sunk by a torpedo. Quiet death. The first sinking of an enemy ship by a torpedo since World War II.
This is what war looks like now. The US using long-range precision strike missiles in combat for the first time, wiping out the regime, says the president.
Everybody that seems to want to be a leader, they end up dead.
But the commander-in-chief in bullish mood on day 5.
We're doing very well on the war front, to put it mildly, I would say. Somebody said, on a scale of 10, where would you rate it? I said about a 15.
Israel has continued its bombardment of the Iranian capital. Broad-scale strikes, they said, on the regime's command centers in Tehran.
I'm sorry to see we're in such a situation. God willing, this ends soon. To the betterment of Iran and the criminal America is gone.
Mohammed Bahravi's apartment has been destroyed.
We were at home when this happened. My wife was hit by the blast wave. We took her to the hospital. I was hit by broken glass. A lot of it hit my head.
There have been more strikes on Lebanon too. Israel targeting Hezbollah sites in Beirut. An evacuation order issued for 6.
Israel's military says it has launched another series of strikes targeting military infrastructure in Tehran. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office says Israel and the United States have made historic gains in their campaign against Iran. In Lebanon, it is intensified on suburbs of Beirut. Israel has ordered the forced evacuation of several villages in the country's south, saying its operations are targeting sites linked to Hezbollah, the Iran-backed militant group. US forces have sunk an Iranian warship which was in international waters near Sri Lanka. Defense Secretary Pete and operate with the military in the ongoing Israel war against Iran. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has previously refused to allow the US to use military bases in Spain for its operations, a stance that prompted President Trump to threaten cutting off all US trade with Spain.
My name is Nazmina. I'm going to buy a
Africa News. The news.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has signaled Pretoria's willingness to step into the escalating Middle East conflict as a mediator, provided its help is formally requested, as the region grapples with rising violence and diplomatic strain. Ramaphosa made the remarks on the sidelines of an energy conference in Cape Town, telling local media that South Africa is always ready to play a contributing role. He stressed that dialogue and a ceasefire are essential to ending the conflict, which has drawn international concern, and said South Africa would advocate for those measures if an opportunity arises. Ramaphosa also noted that his government is actively working to repatriate South African citizens stranded in the conflict-affected region. The offer comes as global tensions have mounted following recent military actions in the Middle East, prompting calls for international actors to support de-escalation and peace efforts. South Africa's proposal reflects its broader diplomatic posture of promoting negotiations and multilateral solutions to international conflicts.
More than 24 Doctors Without Borders workers remain unaccounted for a month after attacks in South Sudan, the medical charity said. 2 facilities operated by the group, known by French acronym MSF, were attacked on February 3rd in Jonglei State, northeast of the capital Juba, where violence has displaced an estimated 280,000 people since December. A hospital in the town of Lankien was bombed by government forces, MSF said, while another medical facility in the town of Pieri was raided by unknown assailants. Both were located in opposition-held areas. Staff working at the 2 facilities fled alongside much of the local population into deeply rural areas where armed clashes and area bombardments were ongoing. Fighting escalated sharply in December when opposition forces captured a string of government outposts in north-central Jonglei.
Nigeria's Centre for Disease Control is calling for stronger state-level action amid a worsening outbreak of Lassa fever. The Lassa virus is endemic to parts of West Africa. Cases peak during the dry season from November to May. The CDC says at least 18 states are affected, with the disease most prevalent in Bauchi, Ondo, Taraba and Edo. The agency has confirmed more than 300 cases and 75 deaths, including 3 healthcare workers. The CDC says poor infection prevention practices and inadequate access to personal protective equipment has contributed to the spread of the disease. It also pointed to gaps in contact tracing and said stigma and misconceptions are preventing people from seeking early care. The CDC urged states to release outbreak response funds to support surveillance, logistics, and community awareness. The 12 countries of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, have reportedly decided to create a new force to fight jihadists operating in the region. Sources told the AFP news agency that military chiefs made the decision during a meeting in Freetown over the weekend. Discussions focused on the rising terrorist threat, the expansion of transnational organized crime, and the persistent challenges related to maritime insecurity.
Ominous warnings this Wednesday night about what the U.S. is planning.
We are just getting started.
The debate over the U.S. justification for the war and whether there's an exit strategy.
When crazy people have nuclear weapons, bad things happen.
And the many Iranians trying to escape the violence. Our Jeff Semple is near Iran's border. A rising star in the U.S. Democratic Party.
We are trying to fundamentally change our politics.
Why James Tallarico's primary victory is a shed moment in deeply conservative Texas. Plus, crash, boom, bang. The nighttime blast that caught much of Metro Vancouver off guard. Good evening and thanks for joining us. The U.S. president who promised he would never lead the United States into a war has changed his tune. Donald Trump is sounding more like a strongman, wartime president than ever before, bragging about U.S. firepower in a video filled with bravado.
We're going to annihilate their Navy.
There is no sign of peacemaking here. After a blistering air campaign claiming hits on 2,000 targets in Iran, the U.S. and Israel claim they will have complete control of Iranian skies within days. In the Indian Ocean, at least 80 bodies have been recovered by Sri Lankan authorities after the U.S. sank an Iranian warship in international waters. And on the fifth day of its war on Iran, the U.S. and Israel are promising to launch a second round of even more punishing air assaults. While questions about the strategic goals of this war, its legality, and where this leaves the Iranian people persist. Jeff Semple is in Turkey tonight near Iran's northern border and begins our coverage.
Last month, to great fanfare, this Iranian warship set out on a seemingly innocuous training exercise in the Indian Ocean. But this week, the frigate suddenly found itself in the crosshairs. This video captured the moment an American submarine destroyed the Iranian ship. The first time the U.S. has sunk an enemy vessel by torpedo since the Second World War.
An American submarine sunk an Iranian warship that thought it was safe in international waters. Instead, it was sunk by a torpedo. Quiet death.
The strike extends the battlefield dramatically, coming nearly 3,000 kilometers from Iran's south off the coast of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's Navy says they recovered around 100 bodies, and dozens are still missing. The U.S. says it has now struck 2,000 targets, with 50,000 troops deployed to the Middle East, the largest U.S. military buildup in a generation.
And the results have been incredible. Historic, really.
From an operational tactical perspective,